Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and today is a very special day on the channel. As I'm sure you've noticed, I've been walking a Forretress for months and months, slowly working at accumulating those XL candies, and today is the day that it is finally built. XL Forretress with the big buff to Sand Tomb is now the best Pokemon in the Ultra League in my opinion. This Pokemon is an absolute nightmare to deal with. I went on a 12-3 run, instantly gaining 100 points, running Shadow Malamar on the lead, the Volt Switch Forretress as the save switch, and the very bulky, newly buffed Dondozo as my closer. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and in game number 1 we pick up a slightly negative lead, Shadow Malamar into Forretress. Now normally a Forretress heavy meta would be a very bad sign for Malamar, but if all the Forretresses are on Volt Switch, then the matchup is a lot more neutral. Malamar will typically end up losing this matchup, but Malamar can play it very close. Forretress debuffs me with the Rock Tomb, save switches into Shadow Drapion, and now I get to respond with Forretress. One thing that I love about running Sand Tomb with the new buff over Earthquake is the fact that Sand Tomb offers Forretress insane consistency. Earthquake feels like a very feast or famine moveset on Forretress, where if your opponent ends up getting the shield call right and shielding the Earthquake, that is a ton of energy down the drain in exchange for only 1 damage. But Sand Tomb, the pacing on it is so fast, 3 to the first, 2 to the second, and you're consistently able to apply defense debuffs which ramp up your Volt Switch damage. I'm able to knock out the Drapion in very convincing manner, and I have enough HP to make a Rock Tomb into my opponent's Forretress, and that forces him to fire off a Sand Tomb. I send in Malamar in the back to have a Shadow Shiny for Alligator. I'm going to stay in with the Malamar, fire off the Foul Play, bank a charge attack for later, and then send in Dondozo. Dondozo's on this team for one reason, and that's the fact that it is monstrously bulky. Dondozo is always going to be able to take multiple hits. My opponent does actually get lucky there, they do get the Crunch debuff, but Dondozo just simply does not care. Even at -1 defense, the Crunch is not going to take the knockout. I farm up quite a bit of energy and fire off the Surf. They no-shield the Surf, but that's still all according to plan. I just needed to have enough residual energy to make a second Surf when they brought in the Volt Switch Forretress. Now I can bring in the Malamar, snipe them down with Psy-Waves, in comes for Alligator, and before I get the back-to-back Foul Plays, I Psy-Wave them down and take the Game 1 win. Hopping into game number 2, we pick up a pretty terrible lead Shadow Malamar into Galarian Moltres. A save switch into the Volt Switch Forretress, my opponent banks energy and then sends in a Florges. This is a clear sign that they are triple weak to the Volt Switch Forretress, and this is the power of this Pokemon. There are so many teams that are just completely shut down by Volt Switch Forretress. Florges is going to do its best to apply debuff after debuff onto the Forretress, but this is still just such a commanding matchup. I can spam out Rock Tombs, their attack has been debuffed to absolutely nothing, so I'm very comfortable tanking multiple Chilling Waters. Realistically though, if I want a chance of getting rid of the Galarian Moltres, I'm going to want to try and save this Forretress. So I'm going to bank a bunch of energy and then pivot into the Dondozo. I'm hoping to bait out the Galarian Moltres, but my opponent has something in the bag for Dondozo, as they reveal their final Pokemon is Jellicent. This game is not trending in a favorable direction. I'm able to land the Outrage onto the Jellicent, which does do some pretty nice chip damage, but everything is so bulky in the Ultra League. Jellicent's able to tank that very comfortably. The good news for me is that I'm not going to get knocked out here. Dondozo is also monstrously bulky, so I can tank the Shadow Ball and make Outrage number 2. This Outrage is going to be getting the Jellicent low, and then I'm going to try and snipe down with the Forretress. In comes Forretress, but I just can't get the KO. They were 2 off, they get the Surf, and that forces a shield. In comes Galarian Moltres, and the only win con that I see is with the Sand Tomb. I need to debuff their defense. So I go for the Sand Tomb into the Rock Tomb, hoping that my opponent is going to let this through. Rock Tomb lands big damage onto the Moltres, but unfortunately, the Moltres is still not in Psy-Wave downrange. I bring in Dondozo, they send in the Florges to get a Fairy Wind, and the game all comes down to this. Shadow Malamar has to try and Psy-Wave down a Galarian Moltres. I'm calling the fly, I'm no-shielding, but they're on payback, and this is going to be close. Sucker Punch versus the Psy-Wave, Shadow Malamar farms down on 1 HP, and somehow we're able to get the win. We move to game number 3, picking up a pretty solid lead, Shadow Malamar into Shadow Ampharos. Ideally in this matchup, I would love to try and catch a Trailblaze onto the Forretress, because if you're able to time it where you do 3 Psy-Waves and a catch and sneak, then Ampharos should be in a very tough spot. And I am able to get that catch onto the Forretress, let's go. It was a Brutal Swing bait, but I would still rather take the Brutal Swing on the Forretress than the Malamar, because Forretress is just so insanely bulky. They go for another Brutal Swing, they send in Empoleon, and how weak are they to Volt Switch Forretress if this is what they're sending in? But this is the power of Volt Switch Forretress in the Ultra League. It just has teams in absolute shambles. I'm able to fire off back-to-back Sand Tombs. My opponent is switch locked. You know what that means. Now I get to send in Dondozo. My opponent fires off a Hydro Cannon. They have no idea what's on their screen. But I mean, look at the bulk on Ultra League Dondozo. This Pokemon is just so stupid. We tank the Drill Peck. In the back, they have a Florges. And this game is so over. I don't even have to shield the Trailblaze. I can survive a Trailblaze even though I'm in the yellow HP and make another Surf. My opponent, my guess is they're running Moonblast because they don't fire off the Trailblaze just yet. And that lets me make the Surf and land some pretty critical damage. Florges ends up overfarming to throw in good timing, but that will take them over 100 energy. And the reveal, they're on Moonblast. And look at this, we send in the Malamar, throw a Psywave, catch onto the Forretress, and at this point, we're just playing with our food. There, my opponent tried to catch the Sand Tomb onto Empoleon, but unfortunately for them, their counts were off. Back in comes the Ampharos. In this moment, I forgot how low it was. I could have just Volt Switched them down. They bring in the Florges, they'll fire off energy, but I'm going to get the win and the 2 shield flex as well. I can just send in the Shadow Malamar. Shadow Malamar is going to Psywave down, and that is a good game. Hopping to the next match, we've got a perfect mirror lead Shadow Malamar into Shadow Malamar. I learned how to play this matchup today on stream, and apparently you want to go Foul Play into Superpower. This should guarantee that if you win Charge Attack Priority, you're going to be able to win the Zero Shield scenario, and considering that Psywave does such little damage in this mirror, you still have about half a Malamar left remaining, so winning this lead matchup is very, very favorable and should set you up in a very good spot to close out the game. Superpower lands, down goes the Malamar, and my opponent sends in Corviknight. I'm going to farm up energy, pivot into the Forretress, and my opponent responds with a Thundershock Belly Bolt. The debuffer of old versus the debuffer of new. Now my Volt Switches are going to be resisted, but my Sand Tombs will hit for super effective. Belly Bolt is going to try and do what it does best, which is ramp up its defense with Parabolic Charges, but I just get to send their defense right back to 0 with my Sand Tombs. And this Belly Bolt is taking some pretty considerable damage, and this is an absolute matchup of the bulk between Forretress and Belly Bolt. They go Parabolic, I go Sand Tomb, and I know I'm very close to a move on the Shadow Malamar. So I'm just going to pivot in. I send in the Malamar, make it to the Foul Play, and now my opponent's forced to burn a shield or lose the Belly Bolt. They decide to let the Belly Bolt go. They're going to try and win this game on the back of Corviknight. Corviknight is going to start spamming out Air Cutters, fishing for its signature boost, but it does not get it, and that allows my Shadow Malamar to hang on 1 HP and make a last-second superpower. That forces a shield, they get the Sand Attack down, and now I send in Dondozo. This game is going to come down to a game of boosts. Will my opponent get the boost? They fire off the Air Cutter, they do get the boost, and that is a swing of momentum to my opponent. I'm just going to be no-shielding, as I know this Air Cutter is not going to do a lot, and now I pivot into the Forretress, and my opponent is forced to fire off energy, so they do not take the Volt Switch. Air Cutter does not get the boost that time, but a boosted Corviknight could make life quite difficult. Dondozo is incredibly bulky, but what it does not do is do a lot of damage. So after I land the Surf, I'm now going to have to commit to a farm down. I'm going to have to make a call. Do they bait? Do they nuke? I shield, and they go for the payback, and that is going to seal it. I do respect my opponent quite a bit for going for the Hail Mary win con there of trying to land the nuke through 2 shields, but we get it right, and that wins us the game. We've got another mirror lead in the next match, Shadow Malamar against Shadow Malamar. I think Shadow Malamar is just so incredibly safe right now, and the fact that it pairs so well with what I think is the best Pokemon in the Ultra League in Volt Switch Forretress, Malamar is just an incredibly good Pokemon to have on your team. I'm going to go for the exact same play pattern. I'm just going to fire off the Superpower on the Charge Attack Priority tie, and if they let it go, they're just simply not surviving. But my opponent will put up the shield. I'm farming up energy, and I lag by a turn. Did you see that? I missed the Psywave. And now, when I try and get the Superpower, I can't get there. I'm behind by a turn. This is such a catastrophic matchup to lag by 1 turn, because suddenly I'm forced to lose a shield that I wouldn't have had to lose otherwise. I'm able to bank double superpowers as my opponent safe switches into Clefable, and I'm going to respond with the Forretress. Forretress has a very, very commanding matchup. They're going to go for the Moonblast, and I decide to go for the Sand Tomb. My hope is that I can go for a Sand Tomb into a Rock Tomb and then look to try and farm down. My opponent's not going to be debuffed, so they will still be able to fire off full power Moonblast, but Forretress doesn't really care about that due to Steel subtyping. Rock Tomb is going to land, they pivot, in comes the Malamar. Malamar will be able to connect for some hard-hitting damage here. Malamar goes for the Foul Play, keeping their attack and defense stat intact, and that proves to be a very wise play, as had they lowered their defense, I may have been able to waterfall down with Dondozo before they made the superpower. but instead, they get critical damage onto Dondozo, and my Dondozo has quite a bit of energy, but there is a full health Corviknight in the back. I'm still down a shield that I shouldn't have had to give up because of that lag in the early game, so I definitely still feel like I'm playing from behind. Dondozo's taken a lot of damage throughout the course of this match. However, I know that a payback is never KOing here. I am an Ultra League Dondozo. We tank those easily. Now it's a CMP tie to the Surf. I'm going to get some damage onto the Corviknight, and I send in Malamar. Malamar going for the foul play. This should just about be range. It does not take the knockout, but I KO with the Psywave, and now in comes Clefable. Clefable losing charge attack priority to the Shadow Malamar. I know that Clefable has a ton of energy, and this is going to be bad. My opponent's even going to undercharge the Meteor Mash to get extra farm. I'm going to get outpaced on the Forretress. I'm one away from the Rock Tomb. I think my only play is the Peekaboo. I send in the Forretress, wait the turn, and get the game-winning catch onto Dondozo. Dondozo's low enough that even an undercharged Meteor Mash KOs. The match timer begins its count down to 0 as we make the Rock Tomb. So even despite that terrible early game lag, we claw our way back, and we get the win. Facing an amazing opponent in the next match, Jason 2890, and he's got a very bad lead cooked up for us. Shadow Malamar into Pangoro. This is a terrible matchup. Pangoro absolutely destroys Malamar, and unfortunately, Pangoro is very neutrally strong into my entire team. I'm able to get an early shield, and now I'm going to save switch into Dondozo, and I'm going to be shielding up his close combat. He's going to stay on the field. He wants damage on the Dondozo, but I am not going to let that happen. It's very clear he doesn't have a good answer to the Dondozo, so I'm not going to give up the Dondozo without a fight. He's going to be sending in Florges, but I feel like if he had Trailblaze, he would have brought it in right away. So the fact that he didn't does make me think that he does not have it. My switch timer should be up. I'm expecting him to do one in the Moonblast. So I wait the turn, I try for the catch. Was he able to react in time? Did he go for the Chilling Water? He did go for the Chilling Water. That is insane reaction time from Jason. He's able to bank energy on the Florges, and the final Pokemon is revealed to be Unova Stunfisk. Now, I am debuffed in this matchup, which means, unfortunately, my Sandtombs are not hitting very hard. As a result, I don't want to throw this energy. I'm going to store it and wait for my switch timer. He's going to land the Mud Bomb. I'm able to bank 100 energy and then send in the Malamar. He has so much energy stored on this Stunfisk, but Stunfisk, even with the rework to Mud Bomb, still does not do a lot of damage. I'm pretty confident that I will be able to survive this double up. Mud Bomb lands, I go for the Superpower, anticipating the switch into Pangoro. He tried to snipe down the energy, but Superpower takes the knockout, and back in comes Stunfisk. Stunfisk will farm me down. I have so much energy on this Forretress. This game somehow, despite the miserable alignment, is going to be very close. I go for Sand Tomb number 1. He's going to be no shielding. Going for Sand Tomb number 2. He's going to be putting up the shield. Can I make it to Sand Tomb number 3? I cannot. And I think I will get KO'd here. And that's bad because even despite the debuffs, I don't think I can waterfall down before the discharge. He makes the discharge, and this is going to put me perilously close to Moonblast range. And he does have that loaded on the Florges. Can I survive the Moonblast, farm down, and make the move? It's going to be close. Moonblast lands. We can't get the move. What a close game, but unfortunately we fall just short of picking up the win. Hopping to the final match, leading Shadow Malamar into Greedent. Now this is an incredibly good matchup for the Shadow Malamar. I did only face 2 Greedents today in the Ultra League. I do think Greedent is a little bit more difficult to run in the Ultra League compared to the Great League, just because of the prevalence of Pokemon like Forretress, Corviknight, and Galarian Moltres. Here my plan is pretty simple. I'm going to tank 1, shield 1, and then throw 7 Psywaves and then go for the catch and sneak onto the Forretress. Because Forretress up energy is just so absurdly strong in this meta, so we get the catch and sneak of the Body Slam, and now my opponent sends in Galarian Weezing. If they're voluntarily sending a Weezing into a Forretress, then it's a pretty clear indicator that they are running Overheat. However, the switch timers are very heavily misaligned, and I'm going to be able to punish that fact. I decide to put up the shield. They do full send the Overheat, but because I got the catch and sneak, I can now fire off the Sand Tomb. My switch timer's up, I can pivot into Dondozo, and my opponent is forced to fire off energy because their switch clock is not up. They cannot leave. So I'm able to preserve basically a full HP Forretress, and I'm going to need it as in the back my opponent has Jellicent. I'm pretty confident they're going to shield, so I go for the Surf Bait, and they end up no shielding. Oh, that is so unfortunate. I have taken a little bit of damage on the Dondozo, and it looks like a second Shadow Ball will come very close to knocking out. Here, I thought I had the Outrage when I went for the Surf Bait. It turns out I did not, but my opponent thankfully did not know Dondozo counts. And that trend continues as my opponent tries for the catch, 1 Waterfall before my Surf was available. Unfortunately, this is when I learned that Dondozo loses charge stack priority to Jellicent. Jellicent will take the knockout. I send in Forretress, and my opponent makes a critical misplay that loses them the game on the spot. They do not overfarm. Instead, they just throw one Hex in the move. This means I can now send in the Malamar, strictly outpace the Jellicent, and win the game. And my opponent knows it before I can click the foul play. They are going to see the writing on the wall and concede the match. All in all, I had incredible results with this team today. Shadow Malamar plus Forretress was an absolute force of nature in this Ultra League meta. Volt Switch Forretress, now that it has a cheaper move in Sand Tomb, and Sand Tomb actually does real damage, I think there's realistically never a reason to run Earthquake now. Sand Tomb having 3-2 pacing is so fast for Volt Switch, and that was always kind of the knock on Volt Switch Forretress, was it felt very slow. But now, you can get rid of Earthquake, you can run Sand Tomb, and it just ends up working out so much better. I feel like sometimes there can almost be a little bit of a letdown once you've been grinding for months for a Pokemon and it's finally completed. But I really didn't feel that at all with Volt Switch Forretress. This Pokemon felt insanely strong in this Ultra League meta. Game after game, it was just shredding through teams. I think it's very, very difficult to build a team that has a Fairy type on it that isn't in some way ABA weak to Volt Switch Forretress. But that's just due to the fact that Volt Switch Forretress has insane offensive coverage, but its defensive typing also means that it is such an absolute nuisance to deal with. Unless you have a Fire type to crush it with double super effective damage, or something like a Ground or a Grass type to get a Volt Switch resistance, Forretress is going to be a nuisance for just about any Ultra League team that you could build. And now that I finally have one, man, I am very happy that I do, because they made this Pokemon even stronger this season. I do think some of the implications of Volt Switch Forretress being this strong means that Corviknight will actually see a decrease in usage. I thought Corviknight was one of the safest Pokemon that you could possibly use in Ultra League's past, but with how strong Volt Switch Forretress is, it really feels like a lot of Corviknight teams can probably pretty interchangeably run Volt Switch Forretress instead, especially considering the fact that with the Mud Slap nerf, there should be substantially less Gastrodon, because Gastrodon's neutral matchups are now quite a bit worse. But man, what a start to the Ultra League. 12-3, gaining about 100 elo. We're now approaching 2400 elo, and who knows, any day now we could be knocking on the door of veteran. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed watching today's video, please do help support the channel by leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And an extra special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide to the channel is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.